Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our first impressions from the new releases from Kublai TX, Vended, and Nightwish. So we got three pretty different releases today, and let's kick it off with Exhibition of Prowess by Kublai TX. And I'm gonna be honest, I was looking forward to this album a lot. We reacted to two of the three singles that they dropped, Low Tech and Supreme Ruler. And after Supreme Ruler, well, Low Tech I loved, and I'm sure you enjoyed it too.
Yes.
Supreme Ruler was also really cool, and that is the intro track at 54 seconds. Kind weird to make a video for that.
Yeah, but they did.
They did, and it looked cool, and it sounded sick.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what? That's how the album starts? What the hell? And I still love it. I think it's an amazing way to open an album. Like, the energy there, Khan is king, like, you're just in that, you're in the aggressive mindset that this album wants to put you in, and it's just from under a minute long track that gets you there. And I love that. And I was noticing throughout this album, like, there's some nasty grooves here, there's a disgusting breakdown here and there, like, Darwinism has a nasty groove. The way they open that song, bang your fucking head. Like, you know what you're in for when that's basically your first full song, which I think is awesome. And I'll mention that, you know, Matt Honeycutt's voice, I feel like there's something about his voice that just invokes aggression. It's hard to really describe, but when you hear him screaming, it's just, there's something about it that will kind of just like hit those switches in your mind and think it's go time, let's, you know. And I don't think there are too many vocals that I can really say that just kind of flick that switch. So it's just an interesting thing I noticed about the voice, and I love that. Yeah, like it was a lot of fun to listen to, though it's 23 minutes long, which is quite short.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, just from like the first listen, it felt like there was a little bit of novelty that wore off for tracks that weren't really super standing out. But the ones that did, and there was a good amount that did, it felt like so much fun, and it's just like this big ball, or I guess small ball if it's 23 minutes. Yeah. But it's a ball of very intense energy, and I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, you talk about tracks that stand out, and that was one of my problems with this album, is that all the songs are good on their own, but to me, none of them really stood out. And when I'm listening to an album, I'm looking for stuff like that. I'm looking for things that sparkle and shine a little bit more than others, because I want to just add more songs to the playlist and things like that. And none of these songs were really like outshining the others. They all kind of had very similar vibe, very similar type of presentation. You mentioned Matt's voice. I think he's got a great voice, but it is in that whole realm of just kind of shout yelly kind of thing, which is typical for the genre, and I understand that. But when you're listening to 10 tracks at 23 minutes long, that can start to get a little repetitive, especially if you're listening to it on repeat, and you know, that can become a little bit of an issue for some people. The songs hit hard, they have a lot of energy, they're explosive, and there's some interesting stuff going on. But there's things like Theory of Mind that starts with the monkey see, monkey do thing, which some people may or may not know, it was a TikTok trend a while ago, and so I've heard that part of that song a bunch of times already.
Yeah, and that was the first single as well.
Yeah, and when it came on the album, I was like, oh yeah, that part. And then the album's so short, it just looped around, and that came on again. I was like, oh, we're here already again? And I felt like I just kept hearing that over and over again.
That became your new starting point.
It became my new starting point. And I mean, the song's fine, but that became a little problematic, that whole monkey see, monkey do part. It feels a little gimmicky, a little try-hard. I know it's fun and it's humorous in a way, but yeah, overall, I thought the album was fine. I just wish there was maybe a little bit more variation in a way. I wish something stood out a little more. I mean, there's a few small little things, but I thought it was just fine. On my first impression, I wasn't blown away. And I was looking forward to this album too, based on the singles. And yeah.
All right, moving on, we got Yester Wind by Nightwish. And I really hope I said that right, because listening to this album, there's a track called Sway, where they say that. Like, I heard that.
They said pronounced it Yester Wind instead of Yester Wind, yeah.
Yeah, they pronounced it like that, and I'm like, what? Because I totally thought it would have been Yester Wind. That's how I read it. So Hopefully they didn't like do something weird in the song and I'm wrong, but
Either way, whatever. Who
either
cares?
way, whatever. So I'm not really huge on Nightwish. I know Ghost Love Score, or at least the part of that song, which is like super popular. There's so many videos and stuff. It was a big thing. So, okay, I knew about that, but otherwise I hadn't really listened to this band so much. Now, I noticed something with this album is that the band sounds really good. When the band is doing some hard riff or whatnot, it sounds great, but I feel like the issue that this album was having a lot of the time when I'm listening to it is that they put so much all together at the same time. It felt like a giant wall. Like they're holding up like a giant plane of glass that they're pushing against you. And it's such a big, wide pane of glass. You're like, whoa, there's so much that I'm getting stuck up against this glass. And it's like, just make it a smaller pane so I can actually appreciate what I'm looking at a little bit better. Maybe it's like a better way to put it, it's like a giant painting. You can't look at the whole painting when it's being pushed right up against your face.
Yeah.
So you have the vocals on top of the band doing stuff, on top of all of the symphony stuff, on top of other stuff that creates this big timbre behind it. It kind of becomes sensory overload at times. And while there's cool moments to pick out in them, it just felt like it was too much all at once. And I feel like when they break stuff down and incorporate less, those are moments I was gravitating towards because I could actually focus on what was going on and think, oh wow, this is a cool thing they're doing here. You know, in An Ocean of Strange Islands, which is the second track, there's like this nasty riff in the quote-unquote end, and I say end because the track basically ends at like the 7-minute mark, and then there's just 2 minutes of like what to me sounded like a bagpipe.
Yeah.
Whether it is or not, whatever. But I feel like that is where you should make a split and have that be an interlude. Because I feel like it would work as an interlude between that track and the following one.
Right.
And when it doesn't really have that much relevance to the song that it's in, why is it in the song? It made a 7-minute track 9 minutes for no real reason.
That's right.
And even if it did have some relevance, you gotta think from a musical perspective. We played the song, we're done. Okay, now we just sit there to wait to watch. You know what I mean? It kind of feels like, okay, the song very distinctly ends for the listener. Let it end in that part.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
The only time I could say that it really kind of works to do stuff like that is if it's the ending of an album, where it's like you got the big ending and then here's this kind of little epilogue of sorts.
That's right, and this is essentially the first song because it's track number 2, but the first track is just an intro, like a build-up interlude thing, which is also 3 minutes, which is also pretty long for a track like that. It is
long, 2:43. It is long for an intro. I do like though, An Ocean of Strange Islands comes in with this double kick that really sets the tone. Like, oh, here we go. Like this is the juicy stuff. And I like that there is juicy stuff throughout the album. It didn't feel like it leaned too hard into the orchestra stuff. There was cool stuff from the band too, and I really liked that. The bridge in the Antikythera mechanism. I like the bridge that was in that song. That had a cool groove. It's just another example. Yeah, a note that I made about kind of like the issue I was having is that the album kind of sounds claustrophobic. I feel like that's a good way of kind of describing the issue that I mentioned. But the first half, I was fairly into it. Like there was some cool stuff here and there, but in the second half, it kind of started to lose me a bit. It just didn't really grip me and grab my attention. It made me really think, I need to hear what happens next. I kind of got to the point where I'm like, okay, just keep going, I guess, whatever. So it kind of just lost me in the second half.
I agree with pretty much everything you said. You stole a lot of the thoughts and opinions right out of my head. Just full disclosure, I've never been into this band. I've tried listening to Nightwish and getting into them because they're pretty popular and I want to like as many bands as I can. And they've never really done it for me. So this is my first time obviously reviewing Nightwish or considering it for review. But I was excited to give it a full, true, honest chance and really dive in and think, I'm going to really pay attention and really kind of allow this to hook me. I'm a fish, it's dropping a hook, and I want to take a big bite.
That makes two of us.
Right. Got it. Unfortunately, I was pretty disappointed in it. And I just think this is just not a band for me, personally. So it's like a lot of things TV Fish said, I can parrot a lot of that stuff. You got songs that feel too long, songs that feel like they could be cut short. The only song that really stood out to me a little bit was track number 4. It's called The Day Of, and then there's ellipsis. But this one, for no particular reason, I felt like it did what you were saying it should do, and that's kind of break down all the extra stuff and just present just kind of the band doing cool stuff. It had more of that in it, and I think it's one of the shorter songs on the album, around 4.5 minutes-ish, where a lot of the other songs are 8 minutes, 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes. And I feel like for a person like me, being more concise with the songs is gonna go a long way. I know there's people out there that really like long songs, and they like songs that have 2 minutes of extra stuff tacked on. That's why this band is popular, because there's an audience for that stuff, and they're doing what their audience likes. If they wanted to appease somebody like me, they'd have to cut out a lot of the buffer, they'd have to cut out a lot of the extra, the stuff you mentioned, like the whole, like, so much stuff happening. Sensory overload is what you said, and that's a great way to put it. Tone that down a little bit, simplify it a bit, stop trying to impress everybody with all this stuff happening at once, and you'd win over somebody like me. Does that matter? Probably not, because like I said, they have their fan base already, and that's fine. Stick with what you know, stick with what you love. The bottom line is this didn't work for me. I had a hard time getting through this album. I found it boring, I found it repetitive, and it's just not really fair to say, but yeah, I did not like this album. It's just not for me.
Understandable. So, the last album to check out today, Vended by Vended. It is their self-titled album. It's finally out. We've been covering this band for a while, reacting to multiple songs with multiple videos, and 4 of the songs that we checked out in reactions made it onto this album. Those are Am I the Only One, The Far Side, Nihilism, and Serenity. Did we react to Serenity? I'm not sure if we did. Either way.
Wasn't that the one where there's like a guy on a farm? He was like digging a hole or something?
Yes, because before that, I think it was Nihilism. That's when they like totally got, like ready to do this heist just for them to knock out one guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was funny. They were breaking into a warehouse or something.
They're breaking into a warehouse, and all they did was just knock out one guy. They got all the, strapped with the guns and stuff just to not use them. Anyway. So, there's the S word here. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to use it. Slipknot.
Yeah.
That's it. So this band has kind of always been followed around by the comparisons to Slipknot, obviously because Griffin Taylor, Simon Cran are Slipknot's kids.
That's right.
So, Paint the Skin, which is, the first like track. Listening to like the instrumental intro, it did give me the Slipknot vibe, yes. But it didn't feel like it was in a bad way. Like I'm like, yeah, this definitely sounds a lot like something Slipknot would do in terms of the riffing, in terms of even Simon's drumming kind of sounds like it's channeling his inner Joey. And the even the guitar tone is comparable, but it doesn't sound like a cheap copy to me. And I feel like for some people it might. For some people it will be like, oh, this is just like Slipknot beat. But I feel like it's just like, okay, they're clearly influenced by that band. You can't say they're not. But it's still enjoyable. I think it's still fun. I think Griffin sounds really good. I like that his harshes honestly don't sound that much like his father, and I like that. I like that they're kind of deeper. It just doesn't sound like he's like a copy. He sounds like his own thing, and I like that. Maybe there's some stuff with the cleans that he does that kind of sounds like it, okay. But overall, he sounds like his own singer, to me.
And when you say sounds like, you're basically comparing, you're either saying, is he exactly like Corey? No. But saying he doesn't sound like him, I think that's a huge stretch.
I mean,
if you put all voices on a spectrum, all voices in a line, like all the voices in the world, they would be beside each other.
Yeah, they'd of course
not on
they'd
top
be
of each
close.
other, but beside each other.
Of course
they sound very close.
There's a comparison to be made. It just didn't sound to me like he was just like his father. It sounded like his own thing.
It's not exact, but it's close as fuck.
Anyway, I liked the singles. Like, I still enjoyed them. I enjoyed them when we listened to them.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy them now on the album. They are standout tracks, which makes sense. If you're gonna pick singles, you're gonna pick your best tracks to get people interested, right?
Makes sense.
I remember, like, I listened to The Far Side, I'm like, yeah, this is really good. And I think I recall when we reacted, if I recall correctly, that I didn't think the clean chorus was necessary for that song. Because the way that it sets up with the groove and the riff and the intro and the verses, it's like a barn burner song that doesn't need it. There are other tracks that could have maybe used it and it would have been fine, but I feel like it wasn't really necessary to do that in this specific track. I feel like they should have just cut that idea basically from it because of the way everything else kind of works around it. But I did like that song. Like it was really good. And outside of the singles, I was trying to think like, okay, well, what else from this album really stands out? They do a few things here and there that kind of stand out in terms of like, okay, this is something I can comment on. Like Going Up is this interlude that they do, but it doesn't really feel like it serves a purpose on the album other than let's give them like a minute or something break before the next track. But
which is a lot of time that is the purpose of an interlude.
Yes, but I feel like a good and effective interlude is a kind of interlude that feels like it's really woven into the album. It's a part of the album experience.
This does feel like it's kind of shoehorned in a way.
It's just like, let's just shove this here. It doesn't really fit with anything else that we're doing here, but it's just there.
Yeah.
It kind of, I would prefer something that either kind of bridges the gap like between the songs in a way that it kind of feels like it makes sense for this song to end and go into this and then it goes into that or something. You know, there's a lot of ways you can do that. I feel like this was just thrown in there as just like, let's just give him a break. It could be anything. It could be farting for all we know. Like, you know what I mean? So, because it just doesn't feel like it matches up with the rest of the album. But there was another song that was a non-single that I liked. Actually, there's two more that I want to mention before I hand the floor off. Where the Honesty Lies has these really sick little pinch harmonics in it. And as soon as I heard that, like, yeah, that's super duper cool. And I like that this song stood out among others because at that point, that's late in the album, I was kind of thinking, okay, the singles are good. There isn't really much that like super stands out, but it's not bad. But then Downfall has this like drum solo that takes up 1/3 of the song. It's a short song, but still the fact that it's just this long ass solo of Simon going crazy, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's honestly for me that was one of the highlights of the album, to be honest. Just because it just kind of comes out of nowhere and like,
yeah,
oh, what the
it's just
heck?
like what the fuck's going on?
Whoa, that's pretty cool. And it's not amazing. I mean, it's a pretty simple drum solo, but it's still really cool. The placement of it's nice.
Yeah.
The fact that it happens at all is cool. The length of it, it's well done.
Yeah,
it's well done.
It's really nice.
It was a nice little surprise there.
But yeah, generally it was enjoyable. It just didn't feel like it had as much that stands out as I wanted to see, especially based on me enjoying the singles.
Yeah, I agree with that last point too. The singles were really enjoyable for both of us, and we were both really hyped for this album. We were both like, come on, give us an album, give us an album, give us an album. The impact of the album did not live up to the impact that the singles had when we first heard them. So when I'm listening to this, I'm like, even the singles, when I'm listening to it, when it's all combined together, weren't hitting me like they were before. And we mentioned this on the channel before, where a lot of times when you listen to songs on their own, and we call it listening to them in a vacuum, or songs by themselves, tend to have a little bit more sway power in our perception when you listen to it, and especially you have the video to watch, you get a little bit of visual sensory, there as well. When you're listening to the album just on its own, you kind of lose a little bit of that, and for me, this album just felt fine. And that was a little disappointing. I was expecting more bangers. I was expecting to be like, oh yeah, fuck, I remember this. Oh yeah, I remember that. And I wasn't really like that. And, the Slipknot comparison comes up. I agree. I feel like they don't try to sound like Slipknot, they just can't help it. And honestly, I feel like if they really want to set themselves apart, they need to add something else, something totally different, a saxophone, a violin, a hurdy-gurdy, something like that. And honestly, make it a permanent part of the band. And you have bands like Nailed with the Scars that has violin in their band, and they sound unique because of that. If you want to sound different than your father's band, you need something like that. That's just, in my opinion, the bottom line, because they're not trying to sound like Slipknot. They're trying to be their own thing. You know that from the interviews, from the little blurbs on Spotify that they write. They're trying to be their own thing. But you can definitely hear where their influences lie. And the fact that Griffin sounds so much like his father, it's really hard to get away from. The vocals are one of the defining things for a band on how a band's gonna sound, right? You can take any band really, but if you put a different singer in Cradle of Filth, is it gonna sound like Cradle of Filth anymore? No, because the vocalist is what makes the band sound like it sounds like it sounds. It's one of the reasons why so many people are heated about Linkin Park right now, right? They got this new vocalist whose name I can't remember, and I had it in my Emily. She's a great vocalist. I think she's amazing. But does she fit Linkin Park? I don't know. And I don't want the comment section to turn into a whole thing about this. I'm just trying to make a point here where not having Chester there changes the sound of the band to the point where it doesn't sound like Linkin Park anymore. So you have somebody that sounds like the singer of Slipknot singing in a band, it's automatically gonna sound like Slipknot. It's just, that's the fact. So you gotta add something extreme into the mix to take away from that comparison. That's my opinion on it. Will that ever happen? Probably not. Do I think it should happen? Yes, because if they don't do something like that, the comparisons are gonna be there forever. The only other option they can do is for Griffin to start singing in a completely different way. Start singing in a different key, start singing with a different grit to his voice, start singing maybe deeper growls, maybe get more guttural, something to that effect. Otherwise, the comparison's always gonna be there and they're always gonna be in their father's shadow, which is a bit of a shame because it shouldn't be that way. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. Thought the album was fine. I enjoyed some songs. I agree with you about the interludes being kind of shoved in there. The thing that I thought was weird as well is the last 3 songs are all under 2 minutes. And the fact that track 12 and 13 blend into each other, that could have been one track.
It probably should have been one track.
Should have been one track, but I feel like they wanted to just make the album 13 because, ooh, scary number 13. Ooh. 13 tracks, ooh. But yeah, you know what I mean? Here's another thing, another credit I'll give this band. This is their first album, their first LP.
Yep.
They're young, okay?
And they've been around for a few years already.
They've been around for a few years, but they're still young.
Yeah.
And they're still learning and they're still, you know, defining and refining their craft. So maybe with time, they'll start to branch out and expand a little more and do things that give them their own real personality, because right now they kind of lack that.
Well, you know, a lot of bands, when they drop their second record, that's when they really get the gears going. And if you look at Slipknot, what happened after self-titled?
Iowa. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like this band's gonna have their own kind of like super defining album perhaps for the next one, you know?
I don't know about that, because the reason why Iowa was so impactful is because self-titled was so impactful out of the gate.
Well,
so they had that head start, and then Iowa came out and it lived up to the hype.
My point is that album was basically like a very strong evolution of the original, right?
Sure.
So with this band, they have this self-titled album, and their next album is going to be a strong evolution of what they had and learned from this one. So they could become a totally different sounding band and really have their own thing going on by the time they make another record.
I hope you're right. I hope it does. I just don't think that it's going to have the same impact as the Iowa comparison, just because this album is not as impactful as self-titled Slipknot. So it's a little bit of a bit of an apples and oranges comparison, but I do see your point, and I hope that they can obviously evolve from this, and I hope people like this album. I hope this you know, people buy it and it gets them some money so they can, you know, evolve from it and move up and do better. That's what I'm hoping. So, but for me, it was fine. I will listen to it more. I will give it more chances. But my first impression wasn't mind-blowing.
Well, anyway, guys, we made the decision that we are going to review Exhibition of Prowess by Kublai Khan TX. So we're going to spin that album over and over and over, all 23 minutes of it, for the entire week, and we will be back next week to give you guys our final review of that album. Anyway, that's all we got for you today. Remember to like the video if you liked it. Tell us in the comments below what do you think of the releases from today, and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm by myself.
See you guys next time.